Biological Riley presents Some Asshole on the Internet. Howdy y'all, welcome to the show. It is I, Miss Fuckle Wuckle Duckledoo, and today we are discussing Top Gun Maverick, i.e. the legacy sequel to 1986's Top Gun that was directed by Joseph Kosinski. Today's episode will be spoiler-free, so that means that if you have not seen the movie, you can still watch the video without worrying about any potential spoilers. Additionally, I don't have any content warnings for y'all today either, meaning that everyone can watch this video, unless of course you have small children around, because I curse like a goddamn sailor. So with all of that out of the way, and without further ado, here is a video essay on Top Gun Maverick. Part 1. Okay, so let me preface something with y'all really quickly in regards to Top Gun Maverick and the title of today's video. See, today's episode is labeled Top Gun Maverick, Heroic Bravery, Political Cowardice, and from that moniker alone, the title of today's video makes it sound like that I'm about to eviscerate Top Gun Maverick, i.e. one of 2022's most beloved films and clear-cut box office moneymakers, a movie that has rolled around in critical adulation and an inconceivable amount of cash like a pig frolicking in the mud where it both shits and eats. Party hard, little hog. And judging by the title of this here video thingy, it really appears like I'm about to drag this beloved film through the slime and the muck, that I'm about to deliver Top Gun Maverick a thorough lesson of hard knocks. And admittedly, I understand your dire premonitions. After all, I labeled this year's most cherished cinematic experience and billion-dollar moneymaker as being politically cowardly. And given that, it's probably easy to forecast this episode as yet another jaded, angry, and screaming rage-filled YouTube video in a genre of jaded, angry, and screaming rage-filled YouTube videos, which, judging by what gets boosted in YouTube's almighty algorithm, may the content last forever, is the vast majority of videos on FilmTube, or TubeTube, or whatever the fuck you want to call cinephile YouTube. I personally like to call it HackTube. But here is the thing, let me assure you that nothing could be further from the truth. As a movie, I actually love Top Gun Maverick. It's a rollicking good time, the cinematography is stunning, the practical effects are amazing, the aerial combat sequences are a rush of pure adrenaline, its character-based drama about interpersonal dilemmas is enthralling, and Tom Cruise, say what you will about him, has a lot of charisma and remains a top-tier action star even at the spry age of 60. Because age-wise, he still looks pretty great, which is impressive, because from my experience, the only thing that can make someone look that much younger than their age is estrogen. Delicious, delectable estrogen. And yeah, it's not actually Tom Cruise's secret to his fountain of youth, but this is the internet. We can conspiracy theorize away with minimal repercussions, because lies are the internet's currency. But to get back on topic, Top Gun Maverick is the type of movie that the theater was made for. It is fun, engaging, and an action-packed thrill ride. It's a great movie. And if I was merely just reviewing the movie, I'd more or less hammer home what I just said, but with a lengthier discussion of the film's plethora of positive qualities. I'd easily recommend it and then end the video there. But that's not what this video is though, and honestly, that's not what my channel is about anymore either. In fact, my whole approach to creating videos has recently shifted as seen with my two most recent Stranger Things video essays. See, the Stranger Things episodes opened my eyes in regards to how I wish to approach media on this channel. If to botch a Loki quote, I have become burdened with a glorious porpoise. And judging by the Stranger Things videos, that purpose is to discuss media with an academic flair, to approach and analyze movies, TV, and video games not just as a fan or as an audience member, but as an educated adult who wishes to have deeper discussions about these artistic pieces which I adore so much, to discover what these works of art mean to me on an individual level and how they can also reflect real-world issues, some of which will parallel real-world social, economic, and political ideas favorably, and some of which will do the same, but less favorably. And using the Stranger Things videos as my guide, that is what I want this channel to focus on from now on. I desire to make more thoughtful videos. This means approaching media with a dialectic state of mind. And for a quick second, let's focus on the word dialectic, something that was weirdly but succinctly recently described and introduced to a wider media watching populace by She-Hulk of all things. And yes, I know this might come out of left field, but bear with me here. For those of you who have watched the first episode of She-Hulk, you may remember when the Hulk explained dialectical behavioral therapy therapy to the main protagonist Jen Walters, and by extension the audience. To paraphrase the Hulk's explanation, he states that dialectical behavioral therapy, or DBT, as acknowledging that two opposing ideas can still coexist and be true at the same time, which is admittedly very much an oversimplification of DBT, much like how describing Starbucks foo-foo drinks as coffee doesn't alone do justice to these sugar-filled breakfast milkshakes that might give you the runs. There are just a lot more components to it than that. But in terms of DBT and the point I'm trying to make, the definition works here, mostly because I'm a big believer in DBT. It is my Jesus Christ, or beloved Saint Grail. It is important to me. See, I learned DBT during my many stints at inpatient and intensive outpatient mental health facilities, and its idea that two opposing things can be true at the same time gave me a healthy outlook on things. With mental illness, it's easy to have black or white thinking and view things in absolutes, kind of like a Sith. It's a mind state that is less open to nuance, and from my own personal experience, DBT bridges the psychological disconnect between two opposing ideas, allowing those of us with mental illnesses to process various mental states in more productive ways. My experience with DBT has influenced the way in which I experience media. For me, when reviewing something, it's important to measure all the various facets of a given work, even when that said work has both notable positives or negatives, especially when that said media has strong great and terrible qualities simultaneously, like the idea that a good and entertaining movie, game, or etc. can also have less than ideal thematic and political messaging, that it has two opposing truths, if you will. And this is important to note because popular forms of online media criticism often don't view entertainment under this frame of reference. In fact, when it comes to many online critiques, we see a lot of movies, games, and etc. be viewed in a black and white lens, especially for reviews and video essays on YouTube. YouTube's mighty algorithm, may the content last forever, generally rewards overwhelmingly positive or despairingly negative opinions on certain films, television, games, and such. Hell, if anything, YouTube highly prioritizes negative content, like the idea that a certain movie or game ruined a whole franchise, or that a TV show, movie, or game was so bad that it quote-unquote violated their childhood. Ugh. And whether we are coming from a perspective of high praise or critical condemnation, there often isn't room for nuanced discussion about media on YouTube, the type that acknowledges that even good movies, games, and such can have problematic elements but still have value as worthwhile and high-quality experiences. That, dialectically speaking, any good, bad, or middling piece of media can also have equally good, bad, or middling thematic messaging and politics, though to be clear, there are times where a film's horrible politics can derail the technical achievement of a given film, TV show, or game, especially when those said politics represent a truly abhorrent worldview, i.e. films like the Confederacy and KKK championing Birth of a Nation, or the Nazi propagandic The Triumph of the Will, two films that can basically be described by the sound of a flushing toilet, because bon voyage, fuckers. But still, even with that caveat, most movies, games, and TV shows should be approached dialectically. If anything, a bad movie can still have good politics or interesting themes worthy of discussion, just like how a good movie can have bad politics that are also worthy of discussion. Because dialectically speaking, these two opposing truths can coexist at the same time. And the same can truly be said about Top Gun Maverick, because yes, Top Gun Maverick is a great action movie with heroic characters who perform awe-inspiring feats, but it also has cowardly and less than savory politics. It is a movie that really works as a crowd-pleasing blockbuster featuring valorous protagonists worth rooting for, all while glorifying the American military-industrial complex with minimal criticism. As a movie-going experience, it is a hell of a good time, but when it comes to messaging, the film's meaning is faulty, it's flawed, and honestly, as the title of this video infers, Top Gun Maverick has heroic bravery, but it also has political cowardice. So with that preface out of the way, let's discuss Top Gun Maverick. The plot follows Tom Cruise's Pete Mitchell, who is an American fighter pilot under the call sign of Maverick. Among the Navy's hierarchy, Maverick has a notorious reputation. On the one hand, he's an exceptional pilot, the best of the best. But on the flip side, Maverick has a tendency to place his thumb into the eye of Navy authority, oftentimes doing what he deems necessary despite his superiors ordering him otherwise. Admittedly, Maverick has suffered repercussions from this. His actions have prevented him from ever being meaningfully promoted and are the types of things that would get most pilots discharged. Because, you know, insubordination isn't something the Navy likes to tolerate all that much. It's kind of like me and country music. There's only so much bullshit that I can take. But Maverick is protected protected by Val Kilmer's Admiral Kazansky, codename Iceman, who commands the Navy's Pacific Fleet. In following one of Maverick's latest cocksure stunts in the cockpit, let the abundance of dick jokes fly high on the winds of time, Iceman places Maverick on a special assignment where Maverick must train some recent elite graduates of Top Gun, which is a top-tier pilot training and competition program. As ordered, Maverick's goal is to train these pilots, one of which is Miles Teller's Bradley Bradshaw, codename Rooster, who is the son of Maverick's former late flight mate Goose and a man with a grudge against Maverick, so that they can embark on a dangerous mission that is reminiscent of a Death Star run. See, an enemy nation has built an unsanctioned uranium enrichment plant that is heavily defended by extensive anti-aircraft weapons and advanced fighter jets, meaning that the window to perform this mission successfully and with minimal casualties is minuscule. It's Honey, I Shrunk the Nuclear Weapons size. And from there, Maverick must overcome some strong young egos and thoroughly train these pilots so that they can have the skill and finesse needed to succeed on the mission. Top Gun Maverick works as a cinematic experience due to two reasons. Firstly, its visuals and frenetic pace really complement one another. See, Top Gun Maverick embodies the original movie's famous quote, where Tom Cruise has the need for speed, no relation. And due to the amount of time following high-octane aircraft, the movie moves at a lightning-fast pace. The jets rip and roar as Maverick and company really maneuver their hefty throbbing throttles with finesse. And for that reason alone, Top Gun Maverick is honestly an adrenaline rush, one that's on par with a Dunkin' coffee with a quadruple shot of espresso. Truly, the film has so much energy that I wanted to start a circle pit around the whole damn movie theater. It's really intense. Yet with that said, Top Gun Maverick is really beautiful too. In fact, it's really important to note that despite the film's constant forward momentum, there is a picturesque quality to the film's cinematography. The aerial shots and camera angles thoroughly display frameworthy landscapes and a wide palette of colors from a high perspective that we honestly do not see every day, because humans can't fly without the assistance of aircraft. Yet. So through the pilots and their machinery, we see the Earth from a view and a speed that isn't often witnessed, and for that, the movie is glorious. Secondly, Top Gun Maverick works emotionally because it's character-oriented. In fact, from the get-go, we instinctively like Maverick. After all, rebellious bad boys are apparently still cool in the 2020s even when they're pushing 60, and through Tom Cruise's performance, we still instinctively enjoy it when Maverick skirts the authority of his superiors, most notably the hard-ass played by John Hamm, all to serve an ulterior goal: to train the capable yet comparatively inexperienced pilots and hammer home how dangerous and borderline impossible the mission is, all while forcing these pilots, many of which have major egos and daddy issues of their own, to work together as a cohesive unit, as a team. And due to this, there's a lot of character building real estate that the movie can work with here. There is a lot of room that our characters can grow into, resulting in some incredibly satisfying arcs, particularly when Maverick shows off some of his superior flight skills and Maverick exceptionalism to his students, even when Miles Teller's Rooster takes issue with it. And when accompanied by the visuals and the action, Top Gun Maverick is an exceptional experience. It's like experiencing Burning Man on LSD. Its exciting pace, Laura Dern jaw-dropping visuals, and the kinetic action complement the character development and the personal stakes into an overall creatively harmonious and satisfying blockbuster experience. In terms of being an enjoyable summer film, Top Gun Maverick is top of class. But with all of this being said, there is one thing that irks me about Top Gun Maverick's narrative, one aspect that raises many questions on a more academic level, which is to say, how does this movie uncritically worship the American military? Because surprise fucking surprise, the movie about Navy pilots taking on a foreign adversary that is developing weapons of mass destruction very much portrays the American military apparatus in a positive light. Save for some criticisms of the top part of military chain of command, which is generally par for the course in any film about the US military, positive or negative, Top Gun Maverick presents a military conflict in broad strokes where the US military is the unquestionable good guys and a foreign adversary is portrayed as the unquestionable bad guys. It is a conflict that is pretty clear-cut in terms of morality, i.e. who is in the right versus who is in the wrong. And this is bad, mostly because the movie could easily be viewed as propaganda, arguably because, and let's be honest here, Top Gun Maverick is propaganda. Sure, the movie tells its own and unique personal story and has creative finesse, which is different from most overt US military commercials, like that Citizen Soldier one involving that really awful Three Doors Down song back in the mid-2000s, or the one in the 2010s where the voice of the Arbiter described the United States Navy as being a global force for good. Which, It's hard to say that with a straight face. But still, Top Gun Maverick does contain problematic elements that could be described as propagandic. For one thing, as Alyssa Shotwell of the Mary Sue pointed out, the filmmakers in the studio behind Top Gun Maverick partnered with Lockheed Martin, one of the US military's primary contractors and arms dealers, and one that makes fighter jets, even the F-35, which as far as military fighter jets go, can be described as an absolute shit show. It's a program that over the course of 60 years will cost the American taxpayer $1 trillion, all despite how the jet has critical mechanical issues and a tendency to malfunction, meaning that for a plane that an aviator would need to depend on for their very survival, the machine is notably undependable. It's basically a fighter jet equivalent of Graham Linnon's career after he went on that years-long transphobic tirade online, because much like an F-35, that shit went down in flames. But this is all beside the point. The actual point here is that with Top Gun Maverick, Lockheed Martin promoted its experimental aircraft technology alongside the film. In fact, Lockheed Martin's website has its own special page touting the partnership between the movie and Lockheed Martin, as well as Skunk Works, which is essentially another label for Lockheed Martin's advanced development programs, and is sadly not an actual team of skunk scientists and skunk fighter pilots, which is too bad because skunks are just fucking adorable. But whether we are talking about Lockheed Martin or its Skunk Works, the filmmakers behind Top Gun Maverick sought out Lockheed Martin in order to get their opinions and viewpoints on experimental aircraft technology, mostly for the early sequence involving the fictional aircraft called the Dark Star, and Lockheed Martin used this as an opportunity to tout the company's technology that it is currently working on, technology that will be used for potential future military conflict. Furthermore, Top Gun Maverick received support from the Department of Defense. In fact, there was an agreement between Paramount Pictures, i.e. Top Gun Maverick's production company, and the DoD. To quote a really good Mint Press news article by Alan MacLeod, who obtained this information under the Freedom of Information Act, in exchange for all manner of technical support and access to military equipment and personnel, the Pentagon was allowed to assign a senior staff post-command officer to review with public affairs the script's thematics and weave in key talking points relevant to the aviation community. End quote. And through the movie, we can see how the script championed the US military. For one thing, the film places a focal point on the importance of pilots themselves, which comes at a time when the US military has a significant pilot shortage. And given that fact in mind, the movie could easily double as a cinematic recruitment advertisement. After all, when Top Gun Maverick released, the military actually set up recruitment stalls in some movie theaters. And there was also a recruitment ad played before most screenings of the movie. Per a Fox News interview with Major General Edward W. Thomas, i.e. the commander of the Airforce recruiting service, the idea is that people are going to go to the movie. We want them to get excited about military service again, whether that's naval aviation or come and apply for the Air Force. We want to take advantage of the opportunity to connect not just the movie and the idea of military service, but the fact that we've got jobs and we've got recruiters waiting for them. End quote. Additionally, supporters of the United States military have desired a Top Gun sequel for a long damn time. Hell, they've been waiting longer than a gaming community that has been chomping at the bit for any scrap of news that confirms the existence of Half-Life 3, which for those of you that are unaware, has been a long fucking while. According to a 2005 piece by the US Naval Institute, the original Top Gun back in 1986 had a notable impact in recruitment, and the author of the piece, which once again, let me remind you, was back in 2005 when the War on Terror was in full golf swing, argued that the military needed another Top Gun movie in order to boost recruitment, that they needed another movie to bolster the military's numbers, and Paramount's Top Gun Maverick will possibly do this now in 2022. By being pro-military propaganda in exchange for being allowed to use official military equipment and vehicles, there is a chance that this film will bolster recruitment. After all, the movie portrays the American imperialist machine in a positive light via an exciting blockbuster spectacle, and that is something that can easily inspire some folks to enlist, to join the Navy, Air Force, or whichever, because truly the success of Top Gun Maverick can also be a success for recruitment. Beyond just being a spectacular action experience, Top Gun Maverick could work as an extension of the US military. However, it is important to note that this recruiting effort likely won't bear that much fruit. According to a few outlets, America as a whole won't be convinced by Top Gun Maverick's more propagandic elements, performance. And this only makes sense. After all, the America that we inhabit right now is very different from the one that released the original Top Gun back in 1986. And no, I'm not talking about how cell phones no longer look like bricks. What I'm actually referring to here is the difference in America's socio-political backdrop. See, when Top Gun released in 1986, we had been more than a decade out from the end of the controversial war in Vietnam, meaning that the failed and honestly immoral war wasn't as present in the minds of the audience. In fact, the public's intense emotions on the subject had been blunted by the never-ending progression of time, which then allowed Top Gun to be more effective as a recruiting piece. But as we all know, 2022 is very different than 1986. After the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, wars that are now in hindsight viewed unfavorably, today's audiences are far less receptible to potential pro-military cinema like Top Gun Maverick. Sure, the audience will still respond to the movie as an entertaining action blockbuster, because you just can't argue against that box office haul, but as a tool to convince viewers on the merits of the US military, the film won't leave as big of a splash, because in the backdrop to all the perma wars and the military's inherent morally murky politics, joining the Navy, Air Force, or etc. is downright undesirable these days, and nothing, not even a cinematic spectacle like Top Gun Maverick, can change most audiences' minds on that very salient point in just 2 hours. It's like a dad who conveniently forgets to attend their child's soccer game. It just doesn't have the time. And thus, the military's attempt to recruit off the success of Top Gun Maverick will likely only find minimal success. But even with that said, it's worth noting that Top Gun Maverick is making an effort by buddying up with the military here. That while the film may be destined to receive low recruitment returns, Top Gun Maverick sells the merits of the military, that the US is morally righteous compared to all its enemies, and that military life is exciting, because at the end of the day, while it may fail, Top Gun Maverick is still attempting to sell an ideal. It is still essentially propaganda, just very entertaining propaganda. Admittedly, this is far from the first time a Hollywood studio has teamed up with the DoD. If anything, it is an incredibly common practice that is close to a century old. Hell, as documented in Hollywood lore, the Department of Defense has thrown its support behind films like Black Hawk Down, the original Top Gun, and even Wings all the way back in the 1920s. And official US military equipment is utilized a fuck ton in modernity, very notably by Marvel Studios for films taking place in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which regularly utilizes military vehicles, uniforms, and such in its movies as long as the films portray the American military in a flattering light. The most obvious recent example of this was with 2019's Captain Marvel, which portrayed Air Force pilots with glamorous flair, making it akin to the original Top Gun in more ways than just the film's boatload of Top Gun references, including a cat named Goose that was also an alien entity that can fuck shit up, which, to be honest, that also describes a normal cat as well. Yet the weirdest example of the Marvel Cinematic Universe's team up with the DoD is in Captain America: The Winter Soldier. See, the DoD doesn't like the concept of S.H.I.E.L.D., a worldwide agency that was more powerful than the US government. In fact, the DoD disliked the concept of S.H.I.E.L.D. enough to where they forwent giving Marvel Studios most of their toys, save for some Humvees, for 2012's The Avengers. Because the existence of S.H.I.E.L.D. hurts the military's feelings, I guess. But things changed in 2014's Captain America: The Winter Soldier, most because it is revealed that S.H.I.E.L.D. had become compromised with fascists and literal Nazis, and the movie is about taking down the corrupt and powerful system that S.H.I.E.L.D. has become. And truly, likely because of that last point, the DoD was on board for this movie. And while yes, S.H.I.E.L.D. is thematically supposed to represent how fascists and even Nazis can embed themselves in government agencies in the United States, including the military, and sell their fascist ideas under the guise of more acceptable rhetoric like protecting America, security, and such. I mean, let's be honest, for anyone that can even semi-read media, it's clear what the movie is trying to represent here, but the DoD either didn't make that distinction or viewed the general audience as unable to distinguish what the film represents, which, given how so many people online are just incapable of understanding the political leanings of the media that they consume, looking at you, Homelander stans, the government, if they did this intentionally, may have had a damn point there. People really don't understand the meanings, even really obvious meanings, of the things that they enjoy. But regardless whether realizing the movie's ultimate meanings or not, the DoD cooperated with Marvel Studios for Captain America: The Winter Soldier, likely because it did not criticize the US military directly, and the powerful agency that challenges the US military's authority was morally murky. The movie's thematic messaging was opaque enough to where the US military either didn't notice or didn't care. So yes, Hollywood teaming up with the US military is a regular occurrence, all to the point that Top Gun Maverick's cooperation with the DoD is just standard operating procedure. Like honestly, no one needs to utilize the Freedom of Information Act to figure that shit out. If anything, movie studios working with the military is about as expected as a price gouging medical bill at a hospital. So since Hollywood has buddied up with the Department of Defense for decades, is it really notable if a movie like Top Gun Maverick does the same? Seeing how normal it is in the industry, is it morally alright for Top Gun Maverick to receive support from the military? And to answer, yes, it is notable, and no, it is not okay. Not a fucking chance. Mostly because receiving support from the military in exchange for peddling propaganda is still bad, even despite how the practice has been normalized. It still merits criticism, even though a movie like Top Gun Maverick is undeniably a fun cinematic experience separate from its jingoistic bullfuckery. It has problematic elements worthy of further exploration, and to do that, we must fly into the unethical danger zone. To be continued in part 2. And with that was the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a like rating, share, subscribe, ring the bell, and leave a comment telling me what you think of Top Gun Maverick and the topic of this video essay. Also, please consider checking out my Patreon. $1 a month gets you onto my Discord server, and $5 a month allows you to start making essay requests. The link to my Patreon is in the description. And speaking of Patreon, I just want to thank my patrons, particularly my high tier ones in David, Samantha, Devlin, Mom, and Morgan. Thank you so much for supporting what I do. Love y'all.